Hey everyone, this is Deborah, and I have Matthew Nordin with me. He is a journalist and a psychotherapist. And the reason why we're talking is because, let's be real, we all need a little bit of help. We all need some kind of outlet, someone to talk to. What we do as journalists, it can really weigh on you. How do you know when something is weighing on you, Matthew?
Well, it literally feels that way a lot of time. You know, those weighted blankets that kids with autism have, and even kids with anxiety have, it can feel like that. And that's what I tell a lot of my clients. And if it feels like that when you're getting out of bed and going to work, that's one sign that at least you've had a traumatic reaction to something. Now, when you start having nightmares about some stories that you've covered, or intrusive thoughts, which are just those thoughts that just come out of nowhere and you're trying to avoid it, but it just keeps coming back, that's a big sign that you might have PTSD, and that you either need to talk to a peer to see and just check in, is this normal? And probably by that point also need to check in with your EAP, your employer's plan, and a therapist as well, just to check in and see, do I have PTSD? What's going on here? Because the thing about it is, too many people, Deborah, think that, we're journalists, we're all going to get PTSD. I don't know what all this discussion is about mental health. We're all going to be getting PTSD. The thing about it is, I'm also an EMDR therapist, which is a way of helping people avoid getting PTSD, or if they have PTSD, recovering, and you don't have PTSD anymore. So what I'm trying to say is, we can prevent you from getting PTSD. We can help you if you already have PTSD, and you can still be a journalist. It's not a case of you got to quit your job. It's about giving you the tools so that you can do your job and do it well.
But there is a stigma.
Mhm.
And I don't know why, because we're all trying to, in 2023, let's get rid of this stigma. I mean, I've seen a therapist. I have done so many different types of therapy. I've been a journalist for a long time. I've seen some stuff.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have issues, like, like, are you even alive? That's kind of like how I feel. Like you don't get through this life without having some issues that you need to talk about. So what do we do about the stigma if there are people out there who, and even some bosses in newsrooms are like, oh, just, brush it off and go out there. What do you do?
If you're worried that some therapist is going to break your confidentiality, and you're a big time anchor or something in your market, with telehealth now, go to someone within your state borders, see a therapist in another market within your state. I have I have Seattle within my state borders, and I have Spokane. I can help anchors and reporters in both. And it's a situation where today we are blessed with this technology. And so the excuses for not getting help are getting smaller and smaller, in other words. And by the way, I don't think a therapist is going to break confidentiality, and they're probably not as impressed when we walk in the door as we think they are. But but it is a concern. And I'll be honest, before telemedicine came along, I did go across the border into North Carolina to another market to see a therapist, also because there weren't a lot where I was in Myrtle Beach, but also because I was worried not so much about confidentiality of the therapist, but people in the waiting room seeing me. I just thought that would be awkward, and that is a concern. And I actually, even in rural areas, a big concern that I heard on NPR one day, which I hadn't thought of. Imagine if you're in a community of, let's say, 20,000, and your red pickup truck is well known around town, and they see it at the therapist or the psychiatrist's office. Everybody in town driving by knows that you're going to therapy. Well, now with telehealth, telemedicine, you can do that from your home. Same thing with an anchor or reporter on air. You don't have to be seen in the waiting room, right? You can do it from your home.
I must have no shame because I've always been not really cared at all.
Well,
I'm never worried about it,
that's wonderful.
I mean, I even went to Landmark where, you share your story in front of a room of 250 strangers. And I was like, yeah, let me tell you about my problems. So let's say you're looking for a therapist. What is the way to go? Because I've had therapists that I was like, we are not connecting here. What do
I
you
think
do?
the beginning is like dating. You're reading their profile on psychologytoday.com. That's where therapists go. It's like the go-to site, like tvjobs.com used to be back in my day. I don't know if it still is, but psychologytoday.com is the place where we put our bios. Did they put a lot of thought into their bio? Did they get vulnerable about themselves in their bio? Because they're going to expect you to get vulnerable with them. And then try them out on 1 to 3 dates or sessions and see how it is. And by the way, if you tell them that it's not a great match, that you need somebody else, they're not going to take it personally. And if they do, if that therapist does for some reason take it personally, it's their issue. They need their own
Yeah.
therapist, right? But you
Well,
need to,
therapists do have therapists.
oh yeah, oh, I need my own from time to time, right? Because issues come up. We're human beings too, and we have our own issues to work out,
Absolutely. What if you can't afford it? Some journalists don't get paid a lot.
And freelancers too. It drives me crazy that we rely on freelancers so much for great footage and great stories too. A lot of reporters and correspondents are freelancers, and don't have insurance or don't have good insurance. There is Open Path Collective. If you just Google Open Path Collective, what they do and why therapists like me turn to them is they'll review what your income is so that I don't have to look at your tax return, and I don't want access to that. And so they'll verify your income level and then tell me, and then you can negotiate what's a fair fee every week or every other week. And then if you can't afford it, like I'm seeing a college student right now who can't afford anything, I see him pro bono, So what I'm saying is, if you're in a starter market where you're making $20,000, $30,000 a year and you can't afford therapy, be honest with the therapist and see what you can work out. I mean, there are some therapists out there, and I'm one of them. $10, if that's what you can afford, I'm interested in helping people. If $10 is what you can afford, I'll work it into my schedule.
It's beautiful. Let's say you don't have PTSD, or you think, that your issues don't rise to the level of PTSD, but, being a journalist, you got pressure. I mean, you got to come up with these pitches, unique pitches every day. You got deadlines, and you're experiencing a lot of anxiety and what some of us call newsmares, which are really nightmares. Like, you're thinking about work and you're overwhelmed. I hear the word overwhelmed all the time. What can you do to reset and be in control of your life, because it can feel out of control?
Well, I think meditation is the best answer. It's really changed my perspective on myself, the whole universe. And I think that word control, even my perspective on control, has changed. And the research shows that meditation helps your brain. There's this part of the brain called the amygdala that's kind of like the fire alarm for when it thinks that we're in danger, and it's telling us. That's anxiety, or that's PTSD when it's going off and we're either trembling or we're having a panic attack. That's the amygdala in our brain. Meditation calms the amygdala down. It changes literally our brain structure according to fMRI studies. And the benefits are just wonderful. You don't have to be religious. You don't have to be Buddhist to do meditation. And you don't necessarily even have to do meditation per se to have a calm feeling. You could be doing crocheting, you could go jogging or running. Whereas if you seriously want to calm down the amygdala, the studies show you do need to do guided meditation or more Buddhist meditation where you're silent. But there are so many things that you can do to put yourself at the center of your life, to be gentle with yourself, to empower yourself. Because Deborah, when you and I were talking earlier, you said it so well that we are not our job. And that's our image to ourselves too often. And many Americans, that's our fault. We are our job. And those of us in TV think that way too often too. And meditation helps us separate that as well.
And we really do. As journalists, there's something about this crazy industry that we normalize working weekends and overnights and holidays and all of these things that the rest of the world doesn't get. And there's something about being on TV that's just so weird. And I say that, it's wonderful that we get to transmit and broadcast and inform and entertain and all of that, and connect with people through, in their houses, right? However, there is, like you said earlier, I said earlier, we do kind of identify with it because we are celebrated for it, that we get a lot of positive, like, oh my gosh, you're on TV. Although sometimes people are like, yeah, I don't watch TV. And then you're like, okay, well, whatever. Love that. Well, what station? I don't watch that. Okay. But I feel like I have at times really identify with my job, like walked around as if like my name wasn't even Deborah, it was TV reporter Deborah. And when I got over that, my life changed. I'm
Exactly.
a coach. I'm a dog mom. I have a dog sleeping right here.
Yeah.
I am a wife. I am a friend. I am author or trying to be an author. I'm a bad dancer. I'm a whole bunch of things. And we just have to have balance in our lives. So that's another thing. How do you get balance when you are working one of these jobs where it's like, again, pitch the story, do the web script, do all the things. And then, you know, it's like 8 o'clock at night and you're like, oh, I got to look for a story for tomorrow. How do you have balance?
Make it okay for one thing to be a bad dancer or be a bad novelist or whatever, and have that outlet where you can at least take 15 minutes and do that thing and not have to be perfect at it, because perfectionism is just, it's just so draining in and of itself. And I'm working with a client actually who is having trouble just dancing by herself at home because it's not perfect. Her body doesn't move like it used to. And so we're working on just going with the flow and doing what your body can do now. And I think perfectionism is just sometimes so damaging that we're just taking the joy out of everything,
Oh my God, we really are. It is, oh my gosh, I tried to be perfect for such a long time. I thought that if I was, I would insulate myself from any comments or like, digs or anything. It's like, oh, people ain't gonna like you or gonna like you, and it has nothing to do with it. But perfection is a losing battle because ain't nobody perfect.
Yes. We're
We're made to be perfect. We're humans.
We're trying to insulate ourselves from judgment from other people and ourselves and rejection from other people.
Yeah. Oh, and ain't this business about rejection? My
It
gosh.
is.
People say, oh, Deborah, how'd you get where you are? For every one job that I got, like I always tell people, like I only got 5 yeses. No one ever said to me, Deborah, we want to hire you here. I said, yeah, no. Every yes I got was me begging for that yes and like really working hard for that yes. I've only gotten 5 yeses. I've got hundreds of no's. And then I got ghosted hundreds of times.
Yes.
There's just, it's not easy, but you have to just put it in its place and know that you're enough.
Yeah. And, that's a good point. I'm not the Meryl Streep of TV news. And I'm in private practice now, but even when I was looking for a job as a therapist, I'm not the Meryl Streep of therapy either. Like the offers just do not come piling up. And that's life.
Meryl Streep, man, we'd be so good if we were the Meryl Streep of anything.
Of anything.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Funny.
I just love her. That's why she came to mind.
Well, but she's the GOAT. She is the best. So it's been wonderful talking to you. And I think this conversation is really going to go a long way in letting people know they're not alone and there's help out there and there's no stigma.
No.
None.
I mean, if the Obamas can go to a therapist, we can go to a freaking therapist.
Go to a therapist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you don't like that therapist, you're worth it. Continue, find another one. There's definitely some therapists that I was like, this isn't working. And I went on my merry way and found somebody else. And then there's people who've changed my lives.
Yes.
Matthew, I am so thankful. Thank you so much. Now, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn, which is probably the best way, because I have a free newsletter right now called We've Got Issues, as in We've Got Issues. And it's specifically targeted for people in the media industry. And I'm taking a look at, in fact, ghosting is going to be in the next issue. I'm taking a look at, journalists, PTSD, depression, and also how we can do a better job of covering mental health issues and who out there is already doing a great job of covering mental health issues. So story ideas and shout outs to people across the country who are doing great stories already with links and all that stuff. I love We've Got Issues. Okay, done. I'm in, and I'll help you promote it in any way possible. And everyone, it will always be free. I'm not one of those people who's like roping you in and then going to charge you $10 down the road. No, it's always going to be free. Matthew Nordin is saving journalism.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Mwah.
Love you.
Love you right back.